Good morning. My name is Rethabile Tsephe, and I'll be facilitating this session on AI in journalism. So the module is Artificial Intelligence Bias, Journalism and Regulation, and then the submodule is AI in journalism. And then these are the lesson outcome, which is the first one is identify specific use cases of AI, which I will do, and then there's to analyze the benefits and risks of AI-driven journalism. So while preparing for this, I was given the task. I think we saw when we saw the template that we need to have a code, and I struggled a bit, and then I ended with Jeff Bezos. I don't know how many of you know him, but if you're aware of him, you know how much he is in love with technology. So you can have the best technology, you can have the best business model, but if the storytelling isn't amazing, it won't matter and nobody will watch. I think this is the case that we can try and relate to, especially in the journalism field, because journalism is about storytelling, whether it's news, whether it's gossip, whether it's disaster, there's always a storytelling element to it. So getting right into my presentation, we have three terms that I believe that are very critical for us to understand. So what is data? Data is, and this is according to Oxford, data is the distinct pieces of information which are usually formulated. Data can be measured, it can be collected, it can be reported, and it can be analyzed. So that is data. And please write it down if you have a notebook so that we can talk about this after the presentation. And then we have what is information. Information is data that has been processed, organized, or structured in a way that makes it meaningful, valuable, and useful. Please also take note and highlight those three words I've spoken. I'll start again. Information is data that has been processed, organized, or structured in a way that makes it meaningful, valuable, and useful. This is journalism. For instance, currently, me talking to you now, me sharing this information, that's what information is. I'm talking, I'm presenting, I'm giving you information. And this is the same thing that we can say when it comes to journalism. And then the last one is, what is data journalism? So while preparing for this lesson, I was reading a statement that I found really funny. It said, both data and journalism are troublesome. And I think if you're a journalist, I think a lot of us are journalists, content creators, media houses, editors, you somehow or more or less understand humor when it comes to data and journalism. Ladies and gentlemen, we live in a digital world where almost everything and anything can be described in numbers, and those numbers are translated in pictures, videos, audio. And when we look at different themes or topics, we have your political votes, you have your misleading or fake news, you have your education on disease, so on and so forth. So for that, we can say that data journalism is or provides a possibility where it opens up and it uses the traditional nose for news and the ability to tell a compelling story. I don't know how many of you read newspapers, and I don't know how many of you listen to the radio, but if you're a journalist, if you're a content creator, it's very important. I think we somehow understand the importance of following and being up to date with the current news, whether it's local or whether it's international, but you more or less need to have a sense and feeling of what's happening in your country. I saw that some of us are from Kenya. Are you aware of the Kenyan news? Not just, don't be selective, but in different areas and aspects, because journalism is not specific, which I think that's where the problem starts. When we start to be specific, in South Africa as well as in Lesotho, for example, I would say that a lot of print media. Ashley, I have a question for you, but not now, obviously. So Ashley mentioned that there's challenges when it comes to print media, and obviously we have AI. But the question I had was, is the challenge AI, or is has are journalists responsible for print media losing the touch when it comes to reporting and telling compelling stories? So you don't have to answer that now. But what I'm saying is when we look at data journalism and looking at automation when it comes to reporting, it's a matter of creating a compelling story. We have the traditional nose for news, like I mentioned, and we have AI, which when we put the two together, they create a compelling story. And that is storytelling. And I believe that you also understand the importance of storytelling. And then going back to the quote of Jeff Bezos, I think you can now more or less relate to what I'm talking about. So, okay, on this slide, we have automated reporting. We have systems and tools and processes that use computer automation to write news at a rapid pace. So now, at a rapid pace, there's also the issue of speed when it comes to journalism. For instance, I follow a lot of newspapers, and I'm subscribed to a lot of newspapers. For instance, I get every day from Monday to Friday, I get notifications from the daily newspaper in Rwanda, and there's a national newspaper that I get updates from every Tuesday, and there's the other one. It's Tuesday, Wednesday, today Wednesday, and all of them, I believe, work on speed, because if we are preparing for, we need to prepare for a week before to post or to release or to publish the newspaper the following day, whether it's print or digital. I think a lot of us may get a good sense of that. So when it comes to rapid pace, we look at AI. I think a lot of us can come and agree and say that when it comes to pace, AI is good in that regard, and not just the human resource. Because with the human resource, we need to remember that before you publish a story, it needs to go through the different life circles. There's gathering information and there's analyzing information, so on and so forth. And a lot of times in the journalism space, and as well as looking at speed, those two may clash. But when you have AI that handles the routine part of work, then I believe that we can more or less create a harmonious relationship together. So let's look at the editorial workflow, automated writing. So we have the automated writing software and content management. When it comes to writing, ladies and gentlemen, I believe a lot of us are aware of this, even if it's not in journalism, but writing in general requires you to gather and requires you to analyze the information or the data that you have gathered in order to write a compelling story, or in order to write a compelling report, or in order to write a compelling newsletter, anything, whatever it is, even if it's a love letter, if people still write letters nowadays. But what I'm saying is when it comes to writing, when it comes to editorial workflow, that's one of the most time-consuming jobs I think editors have. Because with editing, you know that before you publish any story, it needs to be thoroughly edited. And sometimes you can find that it's just minor edits here and there that I believe can be taken over by AI. For instance, we look at sentences, and I'm sorry with how you guys are going to see that. I'm trying to give an in-depth analysis of journalism and daily workflow. So when you look at some edits are very minor because it's more or less a grammar issue, and sometimes here and there vocabulary, but there's always a pattern. I know that editors just don't work with stories that just don't make sense to them or don't create a compelling image or story. And then now we have the AI ethics in automation. So this is newsroom. So I was also doing research, and part of my research, I realized that there are organizations that are really having and exploring and having fun using AI in the organizations when it comes to newsroom. So for this one, I'll start with saying AI-driven tools have the capability to autonomously create news articles by analyzing data, discerning facts, and certifying and crafting coherent narratives as well as discerning trends. Okay, so for this one, I would like for us to look at the coherent narratives as well as discerning trends. We know that trends are everywhere. So even when it comes to news stories, even in elections, even in articles about votes or about elections, about political parties, there's always trends. If you really look closely, you would realize that whatever political party is channeling the message to the public, it's more or less it more or less takes the same pattern with every other political parties in different African countries. I don't know how many of you are aware of that, but it needs a good analysis to it for you to understand what I'm talking about. We have links inside, and this is from Reuters. It's a generation, they use it, they've been using it from 2018, or it was developed in 2018. And part of it, or part of why they use AI automated newsroom is because they're trying to liberate journalists from routine content creation. Like I mentioned again, routine. When I look at AI, when I look at automation, when I look at the topic that we are having right now, it has to do a lot with routine. They are just those routine tasks and responsibilities that I think a lot of us know that we really don't like doing, but we do it because we don't have any other alternative. And I believe when it comes to the issue of transparency, when it comes to the issue of fairness, when it comes to the issue of, or when it comes to AI ethical principles and how they are embedded in this automations that we love so much. We have the NPA, we have the NLP, yes, the natural language processing. And we also have with the routers, yes. They have a team. They're working in languages other than English routinely, and they use machine learning. And we need to understand that. If I'm going to create an NLP and have different African languages, it means that I need to work with the relevant stakeholders from every different country. I've seen that a lot of us have this idea that when it comes to natural language processing or LLMs, large language models, however we call it, when it comes to different languages, I think a lot of us, I realized that a lot of people think that they work alone or no one is on ground, but I think it's the opposite. I don't know Yoruba. So if I'm going to introduce Yoruba in the AI technology I'm using in my newsroom, it means that I need to work with someone from Nigeria. The same with Afrikaans, the same with Zulu, the same with Swahili, you know. So that's how I believe that we can create and manage the AI ethical side of AI and make it relevant. Because what we also need to understand, ladies and gentlemen, is that when it comes to AI, and this is just my end remark, I hope you heard a lot of everything that I said before I got cut off. But just to include in my ending remarks is we need to understand that reporting, or for us to say AI is going to take our jobs, I don't see it happening anytime soon. And I think it's just because we are focusing on the negative side of things, like everyone is. So we need to understand that before everything, how do we manage a balance between automation and human oversight? We need to identify tasks suitable for AI and automation. We need to train and upskill employees who work alongside AI. We need to establish clear rules and responsibilities for humans and machines. And we need to implement monitoring and evaluation processes for us to have that harmonious relationship I talked about during my presentation. So I believe that that's how we can strike a relevant and manage the relationship between automation and human oversight. Thank you.